What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and today I am here to talk about the upcoming Bellator card as they take on Rizin for the second time. It's a card headlined by Patricky Pitbull against AJ McKee with some other very good fights in it. Now, there's kind of a double card here for Bellator and Rizin. I'm going to concentrate mostly on the 5 Bellator fights, but we will touch just briefly at the end on the Rizin fights. But I think it's interesting that Bellator continue to do this. Obviously, we all know about the rumours of a Bellator sale or a Bellator merger. So, you know, I hope it isn't, but this could be, you know, this could be the last time we see this for a while. So, look, I think a lot of people have wanted to see cards across promotions for a while. Like we'd love to see, you know, let's say AJ McKee at lightweight taking on Dustin Poirier. He's fighting on the same night, or you know, Patricio Pitbull taking on Volkanovski, or whatever it might be. Any fight, you know. There's when MVP came out last week as a free agent, everyone was like, "Oh, Wonderboy versus MVP, a fight I wanted to see for a long time." Look at Wonderboy up there. Actually, the MVP one fell down. It's just behind me there, but that's a fight I wanted to see anyway for years and years and years. And look, Bellator and Rizin have given us that. But I think with, you know, it's a lot of Bellator fighters that we know, and then a lot of Rizin fighters that we have to go on Sherdog and go on YouTube and go on other places and look up. And that's not to say that they're not good fighters, because, you know, doing my research for this card and obviously the last card that we covered as well, you find some, they're very good fighters, and there's a lot of people who watch this scene a lot, and a lot of people who cover this scene a lot. So I'm not taking anything away, but for me, who covers a lot of MMA, like, for me, Rizin is one of those cards that's very hard to watch for me, because it's very, very late after an already very, very late card usually. So I'm like, yeah, it's too much. It's almost too much. But it would be different. Like, let's say, look, there's the talk of the Bellator and PFL thing and all. Whether that's true or not, we will see in time. But like, if it was that, I think it'd be a different sort of thing. But at the same time, right, I'm you know, acting like I'm negative on this or something, but I admire Bellator and Rizin for doing it. You know, fair play to them. There's always talk, you know, PFL talk and KSW talk and Bellator and all of them talking. Well, take Bellator aside, but none of them have actually done it yet, you know. Cage Warriors who can throw him in there, they've thrown their hat in, but none of them have actually done it. And fair play to them for going out and do it. And you know, I always say as well, whatever you can do in the chasing back to be different, to not have the same homogenized product as the UFC is good. And this is one thing that the UFC won't do. You know, the UFC won't do tournaments. You do tournaments, you're a little bit different. The UFC won't co-promote. You co-promote, you're a little bit different. You have sponsors. You have proper walkouts. You have fun. Look at KSW, the promo they did a couple of weeks ago with the Baywatch type of thing. Absolutely hilarious and brilliant. You know, the UFC never do things like that. And, you know, they have to kind of farm out their things to like comedians and influencers and stuff. And it's just like, it's not the same. You know, it's just not the same. But with that said, let's get into the card and let's talk about it a little bit. And I'm gonna start from the very top. Patricky Freire against AJ McKee. And you know what? When you look at Patricky, you know, even though, okay, he's lost fight to Usman or Magomedov, I think we have to start talking about him a little bit differently than we did a few years ago. No, not to say, you know, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights as well. Let me say that as a preface here. But I think before that run, like that went through 2017 to 2019, where he beat the likes of Vincent Henderson, Josh Thompson, Roger Huerta, you know, Kawajiri and a few more, I think a lot of people looked at him and, you know, he was the brother of Patricio. You know, he wasn't as good. And I'm not saying now he is, but what he is a good fighter. And I think we need to acknowledge that he is a good fighter. And like, I saw him fight obviously in Dublin here, and he was very good that night. Obviously he won in the second round after a good first round as well. And there's some fighters you watch live and you see him and you're like, okay, this guy is like a really good athlete. He hits hard. you know, it takes a good fighter to beat him. And we've seen over the last few fights, you know, it's taken, you know, Peter Queally beat him, and obviously he got the win back against Queally, but Mosaev, one of the best lightweights in the world in Bellator, Usman or Magomedov, some people might call him the best. And then it was Michael Chandler all the way back until Derek Anderson lost in 2015. So, like, he's only lost to, you know, some of the top fighters in the world. I mean, let's say you even take away Queally, you know, all the rest of those lads have been, you know, top of the top in their relative organizations, you know, and this goes all the way back to 2015 for Patricio. So, or for Patricky even, and that's a mistake I'll probably make about 10 times here. But anyway, and like, he goes in here against AJ McKee, so it's a different kettle of fish, I suppose. But what he has shown and what he has done in that run is, like, get big, decisive wins. I'm looking at all the records of all those fights I just spoke about, and it's nearly all knockouts. Like, knocked out Queally, knocked out Gustavo, knocked out Kawajiri. He did go to decision against Scope, and that was a relatively close one, but knocked out Huerta, knocked out Campos, knocked out Josh Thompson, and, you know, you go on and on and on. Knocked out Ryan Couture even further back than that. And that's what he's going to have to do, I think, against AJ McKee. Look, McKee is an absolute beast of a fighter. It's funny to think he's 28 years of age now. He still seems to me like, you know, he's the young up and coming lad of 22 or 23, but he's 21 fights into his career as well, which is far from that. So, look, with AJ, he's one of those guys who the record of his wins shows it all. 6 KO, 7 submissions, 7 decisions. And when you think of, like, a modern day fighter, I talk a lot about this. I do a podcast called Speaker's Corner where we talk about, like, the future of MMA or what it takes to build a great MMA fighter today. Like, AJ McKee almost is what we have today. Now, I think there will be, look, we used to look at Rory McDonald, and I think that will change over time. Like, it changed, say, from a Rory McDonald to an AJ McKee to whatever's next. But there's this well-rounded skill set. And, like, AJ McKee has been up for submission of the year for, you know, 2 years in a row between, 2020 and 2021 for the Caldwell neck crank, which was unbelievable, and the Patricio guillotine as well, which was also unbelievable. Like, and you might look at AJ and you might, you know, watch that fight against, say, Spike Carlisle, or obviously the 8-second knockout against Georgi Kharkanian, and be mistaken for saying, oh, this guy is a boxer or whatever, you know, a striker. But then when it goes to the ground, he's an absolute beast there as well. You know, he's anaconda chokes, arm bars, all different sorts of ways to win. And it's almost like this is a bit of a clash of styles here, because I think what Patricky has molded himself into, like his brother, and sometimes I don't think it's right to compare brothers or compare people for camps, because they're often a lot different. I think the biggest one ever was Sergio Pettis and Anthony Pettis. Like, they fight nothing alike, really, and people used to always compare them. Like, why are you comparing these two lads? You have one lad who attempts to circle, can't do it, might catch you with something big, and might catch you with a submission as well, against the guy who can kind of control the pace, can throw a jab, can kind of go forward with 1-2s, is a very technical striker when he wants to be, can wrestle as well. Just very different fighters, you know. But for Patricio and Patricky, I don't think that's necessarily the case. They are similar fighters, I think. Now, I think, and here, this is maybe a funny way of saying it, but I think what the limitation that Patricio showed at 135 is almost what Patricky is a little bit. Like, I think what Patricio has over most guys we've seen at 155 and 145 was that he's faster. You know, faster, more athletic, and can use his athleticism. When he went down to 135, he was slower than the aforementioned Sergio Pettis, funnily enough, but also didn't have the pop because of that big weight cut and everything like that. Patricky, what he has been able to do against guys who maybe aren't of the athletic ability of, say, his brother or of Sergio Pettis or of AJ McKee, is fight a similar sort of smart, intelligent game plan and win that way with his power. Like, there's no doubt about it, he is a powerful guy, and he fights a smart game plan. And what is that game plan, basically? it's basically be comfortable in the pocket, wait for your opponent to make a mistake, be very, and by comfortable I mean defensively comfortable more than anything else, and strike with that big shot. Against AJ McKee, I think that's very difficult. Now, with AJ as well, over the last, number of fights, we've seen him fight, I think, in different styles. Like against Spike Carlisle, he came out and he was guns a-blazing, right? The very fight before that against Patricio Freire, and maybe this is why he was more like, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to be solid, I'm going to win this fight, and then he ended up losing that, and it was a relatively controversial decision. I think there was definitely some conjecture over it. But what way is he going to fight now? What way is it going to be different? Like, it's a very interesting one. Like, he came out and hit Patricio the first time very hard, almost finished him, and then ended up submitting him. Against Darian Caldwell, got taken down, but ended up submitting him very quickly as well. There wasn't much of that fight to go, but it's interesting to see how he fights this fight against almost a carbon copy of Patricio. And now we've seen him fight Patricio twice, but differently twice. And I just wonder, and look, this is probably my call on it, but I do think he will fight a lot differently in this fight than he did in the second Patricio fight. I don't think he'll be sitting on his laurels. I don't think he'll be taking his time. I don't think he will be throwing his nice jabs and nice 1-2s and trying to outpoint Patricky here. I don't see it. I think he will realize what he did against Patricio first time out was the key to success, and try to do it here. And what is that? I know not that he necessarily did this in the first fight, but I think the key to success against either the Ferreira brothers is not allow them to be defensively comfortable in the pocket, not allow them to put on that countering pressure game that I've called it for years now. Some people do it like, look, a famous one that did it was obviously Conor McGregor, who pressures you and encounters you, or creates an opening for himself with like a spin kick or maybe even the jab, and then hits the big left hand. Whereas the Ferreiras are more about the kind of wait and methodical and boom, start to pace. But they can only really do that if they are the ones on the front foot, as the Sergio Pettis fight really showed with Patricio. So push Patricky back if you're AJ McKee, get him on the back foot, maybe even throw in a few takedowns there. But I do think he has the ability to land a few big shots in the field. I think he'll want to make a point as well about this fight, because we all know that third fight against Patricio is going to happen at some stage, even though they're a few weight classes apart now. But I do think that will happen. But if you don't beat his brother, I don't think that is going to happen. So yeah, that wouldn't be my call on this one. I think AJ McKee will win. That's my prediction. I think he will win going forward. And yeah, it's and I suppose just for the other side of it, then like Patricky needs to keep that pressure. He needs to make him pay. He needs to land big shots. Like if AJ is jabbing into range and trying to push him back, hit him. Throw that right hand, throw that left hook, throw that leg kick, and make him pay for it. Absolutely make him pay. But I don't think he can, and I think AJ McKee will win that fight. Next one I want to talk about is Kyoji Horiguchi in the flyweight title fight against Makoto Takahashi. Obviously, we all know Kyoji Horiguchi's been around for a long time, 32 years of age now, 36 fights into his career. Takahashi, also known as Shinru, as my YouTube, YouTubing, I suppose. I was going to say YouTube Googling, but my YouTube searching had me find him. He's only 23 years of age, 17 fights into his career, but he's on a massive run. He only lost, as I said, once in his career. He's one draw as well, in there. So what is it, 16-1-1. Hasn't lost since back in 2018. Has been on a massive run since then. Obviously, fighting in Rizin. He'd won fighting CFFC, fought in Deep a couple of times as well. But he has a bit of Bellator experience. He fought there back in 2019 against Nakamura when the Fedor and Rampage card happened in the Saitama Super Arena at Bellator 237. So, I went and I watched a bit of him. And he's a very funky ground fighter, is what I would say about him. Watch one of his recent fights, and he did something that I don't think I've probably seen it a couple of times. You've seen everything in MMA, but you don't see it often. And I actually saw him doing it in 2 of his fights. He takes the back and then he controls the arm like inside his leg, like he traps the arm behind your back. So when you're defending the rear naked chokes, you've only one arm to defend it. And he's like really, really, really good at doing that. Now he only has 4 submissions in his career, one of which is a flying guillotine choke. I didn't manage to see that now, but I do need to go and see it. But you know, all of those were in his last 6 fights, all since 2020. He has that one I'm just mentioned. He's a ninja choke, he's a guillotine, and an arm triangle. And you can see by the way he fights, he's obviously become more of that in his last few fights than he was before. Brilliant transitions, very fast. Loves to. You see with MMA a lot these days, right? It's position over submission, or once you get your position, you control your position. And it's not that he doesn't do that, right? But he does love a pass, and I myself, if I'm trying to throw in my opinion here on it and on like the judging or whatever, I actually think passing in MMA is less beneficial now than it ever has been, unless you can do it very successfully very often. But anyway, we leave that debate for another while. But he doesn't always even have to do that, because he pulls guard sometimes. And you know, one thing I would say about him as well, he's very, very, very strong. He's a southpaw. He attacks hard. He's a nice jab, but the one thing you'd say about it, and like I watched the fights and I went and looked at his record, and I wasn't surprised to see in those 18 fights he has 0 knockouts. Doesn't have the most power, and I think that is definitely an issue for him. But look, on my notes here I've written all he needs is a leg. You know, he catches onto that leg and his back takes are unbelievable. His ground game is second to none. Absolutely brilliant. And you know what, it's been funny for Horiguchi, because his opponent in his last fight, Hiro, we talked about that, and he's actually fighting on the Rizin portion of this card as well. And just to mention that, I suppose he's fighting Juan Archuleta. I believe that's on short notice, and that's going to be for their bantamweight title over there. You know, he's a very I suppose wrestling-minded fighter as well, or ground-minded fighter, and for Horiguchi to go from him into Shinru is very tough matchmaking on him, especially, you know, coming out of that run where, you know, he lost 3 of his 4 fights against Patricky, against Sergio Pettis, and against Kaya Sakura, even though he was able to beat him obviously in the rematch. But it's been a tough enough matchmaking journey, even though maybe you would say, if you were to just look at the names, maybe you wouldn't say that necessarily. But how did he beat Hiromasa Ougikubo? He beat him by not allowing him to be the dominant wrestler. You know, when he did wrestle, he was able to get in top. When it did strike, he won the striking. And that was, look, that's the analysis coming into it, and that's the analysis coming into this as well. If Shinru pulls guard and gets on top of you, or sorry, if he pulls guard and gets under you, get on top of him and hit him as hard as you possibly can and win that, or get out. On the feet, you're like, Horiguchi's a fantastic striker. He's athletic, strong, hits hard, one of the fastest fighters we've ever seen. You have to make him pay if you're Horiguchi, but that goes even tenfold for Shinru. You have to make him pay if you are Shinru, because if you get a chance on the ground, you have to submit him. That's the only way you're winning this fight. Like, you're not winning it by decision. You're not knocking him out. You have to submit him. And he has 5 rounds to do it. Can he do it? You know what? He's very good, but like, as someone who's only maybe been very good at submitting lads for the last 3 years, is that going to be enough against someone like Horiguchi, who, as I said, what is he, 36 fights into his career, made his debut all the way back in 2010? it's going to be tough. It's going to be very, very, very tough. And I think I'm definitely picking Horiguchi coming into that one. Just on the Rizin card as well, I might as well talk about it a little bit here. Now that I mentioned it, that Archuleta fight against Hiro. Like, he fought Horiguchi and lost him at Christmas Eve or on New Year's Eve, and he lost his fight before that actually as well. But he'd been on a great run before that. He'd beaten the aforementioned Kaya Sakura. He's a lot of submission wins, a lot of decisions as well, mostly decisions. But look at Archuleta now, like 32 fights into his career, getting on at 35 years of age, and it's the tourism. Obviously he's been in Rizin now after being in Bellator. Lost in Bellator a couple of times, lost to Stotts and lost to Pettis, but he has beaten Enrique Barzola, one of my favourite fighters. He's a win over Patchy Mix, who... Is it hard to argue that Patchy Mix is the best 135 pounder in the world at the moment? It probably is hard to argue that, but I wouldn't call you a fool if you try it, and he has a win over him, so you get the win here, and it's going to be a massive thing. Look at his record, and he's 11 knockouts, 1 submission. And that's what Archuleta is. Like, this is a fight I think will probably go to a decision. I think there will be a fair bit of wrestling out of Hiro, but I think Archuleta has the ability, I suppose, to keep it on the feet for long enough, and I would fancy Archuleta in that one. And just to mention some of the other fights as well, Mikuru Asukara is fighting for the featherweight title against Karamov there. Tawfiq Musayev, who I mentioned earlier as well, is fighting Akira Okada on this card. There is a few other fights on the card as well. I'm sure you'll be you tuning in to see that. But back, I suppose, to the Bellator card here. And the next fight I want to talk about is Kana Watanabe against Arteaga, and then we'll finish it out with the two smashing fights between I'll tell you about them in a minute. But Watanabe is a steady orthodox fighter, not the fastest fighter in the world, but very relaxed, takes a lot of shots, but very strong, can keep going. She took Elira Joanna down with an arm throw last time out, likes to catch the singles. As I said, heavy on top, but needs to have that control, needs a slower pace. And Veta Arteaga is the exact opposite. She is a pressure fighter, relentless. She got a lovely guillotine against Denise Kielholz. And, I think that's the winning and losing of the fight. I think Watanabe will probably be the favourite here. Look, she lost last time out to Lima McFarlane. She lost to Liz Carmouche as well, who hasn't been made yet, but they're likely the two fighting for the title next. And for Veta Arteaga, she's 7-5 in her career. But watching a couple of fights, I don't think that is fair. Like, look at the people she's lost to. She's lost to Inaba last time out, Alejandra Lara, Alima McFarlane, Bruna Ellen, and a fight back in Bellator against Yankova in 2016 as well. Now, she hasn't had that many fights, but in that division, I think, the flyweight title, as I said, will be on the line between the two I just mentioned. You look at Watanabe, who, she puts on a few wins, and I think, they love, the Bellator absolutely love the Japanese market, and if he keeps going there, they would love to do a fight with her there, I'm sure, for the title. And for Arteaga, she's an exciting fighter, and always when exciting fighters are in the mix, they have a better chance. But look, both coming off of losses, it will take another while. But look, I think Watanabe will win, but I would not rule out Arteaga. Maybe watch the betting show this week, and when the prices I don't think are out yet, but when they do come out, I'd be interested to see how they go. One of my favourite fights this month, and maybe even this year, is Magomedov against Danny Sabatello. I love when two wrestlers go at it, and they're like, I feel like, look, sometimes two wrestlers go at it and it turns into a bad kickboxing match. But with this one, I feel like someone will win the wrestling game, and I feel like someone will go for it in the wrestling game. And I just want to see that battle. Danny Sabatello gave up his pretty long unbeaten run. I know he lost to Erwin Rivera back in the day, but he was unbeaten in Bellator, lost to Rafi and Stats by a close enough split decision. Although, no, it wasn't. It wasn't the closest. It was there was a certain man who had that in a split decision and no one else. But look, he's beaten Brett Johns, he's beaten Jornel Lugo, he's beaten Leandro Higo. For Magomedov, like when he started that tournament, he was my number one. He was my favourite. Everyone, I suppose, when Petr Yan was the champion, went back and watched their fights, and the way he'd beaten Petr Yan back in 2016, I think showed to everyone what a good fighter he is. He comes into Bellator, he puts away two guys very, very easily, and he's gone into that Stotts fight, and you're thinking, okay, he's going to win this, and he's going to win this tournament. Loses to Stotts in a fantastic performance by Stotts. Beats Barzola, so gets back on track, but then loses to Patchy Mix. And actually, the Stats one was before the tournament, wasn't it? I think, yeah. So, but that win for Patchy Mix was massive for Mix, and I think turned around his, not necessarily his career, but how people view him as a top fighter. But for Magomedov, it almost did the opposite. So this is his opportunity to, I suppose, to climb into that mix again, because if you do beat Sabatello, you're again viewed as a top fighter. Now, who's Sabatello? 3 knockouts in his career, 4 for Magomedov. They're similar enough records, a few submissions and a few decisions each as well. You know, basically the same in terms of percentages there. If it gets on the feet, I feel like Magomedov is probably a slightly better technician, and maybe Sabatello will hit harder. But, you know, we saw Sabatello in that Rafi and Stotts fight, and, you know, how long ago was that now? Let me just have a look here on Sherdog.com. It was December 2022. Where are we now? It was only 8 months ago. It feels a lot longer than. He's had one fight since, but I wonder how much his striking has come on since then. You know, he still is 30 years of age only, which is young enough. I know Magomedov is 31, but I feel like with 22 fights, he's been around a lot longer. And, you know, when you're fighting Yan 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago, it's a bit different. So maybe Sabatello has come on enough, but in his striking, if it does turn into a striker match. But what if it doesn't? What if this is a wrestling match? Who's going to win that wrestling match? I think Sabatello will definitely be backing himself. I think Magomedov will be backing himself as well. I don't know. I don't really have a pick for this. As I said, wait for the betting show and I'll give you my pick. For Abundamo, I'll give you my pick here. I'm gonna go for Sabatello. Even though I've been on the Magomedov train for a long time, I'm gonna go for Sabatello here. A fight that's going to be very opposite to that, I think, is Andrey Koreshkov versus Lorenz Larkin. Look, they're two lads who can wrestle, but they don't much. Now they might, you never know, they might switch it up here and everything, but got two of my favorite fighters for a very, very long time, knockout artists. Let's just look at it here. 14 knockouts for Koreshkov in his career, 13 knockouts for Lorenz Larkin in his career. And I'll be honest with you, lads, Lorenz is 36 years of age now, turns 37 in just over 2 months. And there was a point in his career, you know, when he lost 2 Bellator fights, and I think that was the point that I was like, well, you know, maybe that's it. Maybe he's done now. Maybe that's, you know, not for him anymore. But he turned it around. You know, obviously this is a rematch and it was a split decision the last time. But like the knockouts, last time especially over Berkamov after no contest before that, knocking out Kyle Stewart, beating Rafael Carvalho. It's been a great run. He hasn't lost since that Paul Daly fight in 2017. And I think this will be a different sort of fight to the first one, because I think someone is getting knocked out here. Is my opinion on it. I think the Monsoon has always been, like, as I said earlier with the Patricky brothers, Patricio brothers, not Patricio brothers, Fajea brothers, Pitbull brothers. That was the one I was looking for. They're kind of that look for that one big shot. He's always been like that, but I think he's more like that now. And I think Koreshkov is probably a better all-around fighter now, which will actually make Larkin look for that big shot even more, and that left hook. Everyone knows about that left hook. It's absolutely amazing. It's an absolutely brilliant shot. You just wonder as well, will someone, I said it at the start and, you know, kind of tongue in cheek maybe, will someone throw in a takedown? Will someone try to kind of change it up a little bit? But, you know, as the first fight goes, I think the second fight probably will as well, in terms of it being close, but I do think there will be some sort of game changer here. You know, as good and all as Larkin has been, he has taken a few knockouts in his career. Not too many, you know. Obviously, Paul Daly was one, and there was one a good few years before that against Costa Philip, which is, we're nearly going back 10 years now at this stage. But Koreshkov has the power to do it. Larkin has the power to do it, and I like it. I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Larkin. He's impressed me an awful lot over the last while. Okay, he did win the first fight, split decision and all of that. I do like Koreshkov's, like, his improvements throughout the years. He is only 32, so he has the age on his side, but it's a very interesting fight, and definitely one that I'll be tuning in to watch. So yeah, that is that's the full Bellator card. Obviously, I've touched on the Rizin card as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. The tournament goes on. Obviously, did I mention that the main event is one of the big tournament fights, and we move forward with that at lightweight as well as the flyweight title and much more. So I will leave it there. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.